Okay, so I've got my model here, and I have the features, I have the clothing that I want, and the question is, how can I easily and quickly make this into a low poly version of this without taking too much of my time? So the first thing I need to do is make sure I have duplicates of everything. I've named everything in here high, so what I'm going to do is select all of these objects, and I'm going to hit M to add it to a new collection. I'm going to name this new collection High Poly. This way I know that is everything in this collection is all my high poly objects, easy to turn on and off. I'm going to take this collection and I'm going to duplicate that collection, not linked, just duplicate. And now I'm going to turn this off so that if I screw with this or I mess things up or I break it, I know I still have the high poly version here. And I haven't messed up because I need two versions. I need my high poly and my low poly. It's very important. Won't need to unwrap my high poly. At this stage, my high poly is done. This is the version I need to change. So let's change this to low poly. All of this in here, all this is what I'm working with. I can do the renamer tool. I'm going to select all of these here, and I can do Control F2, and it lets me do things like find and replace. So I'm going to do find the word underscore HI and replace it with underscore low. Since I duplicated it, everything got a 0.01 because there were already two of those. So I'm going to have a new condition, and that's going to be strip characters, and I'm going to take strip from the end. I want to take the last digits and punctuation here, right at there. So let's see what that does from the end. Let's see what that does. Didn't get rid of all of my O's001s. I guess I could do another Control F, find and replace, and I could replace 0.001 with nothing. There we go. So now I've named all of these high, low, and I like to make low versions of all of these. I'm going to start with the shirt because it's one of the ones I worked with first. So I'm just going to take the shirt by itself, ignore everything else. Sometimes what's nice too is I won't change the name to low until I'm done with it. So maybe I'll do that right here because I think that might be helpful to see the process because it helps me sort and order these things out there. So I'm going to select all these, Control F2, and let's strip out low. We can always add that as I go. So let's start with the shirt. I'm going to take the shirt by itself, and the shirt, since I worked with this, I have two modifiers on it. And if you've been following the way I've been showing you how to do it, you should have these two. Your multi-resolution should still be on, and your solidify should still be on. In multi-res, what we can do is go to shape, and we're going to do apply base. This is going to say take all my sculpted information and try as best we can to apply it to the low poly version. So now this is the low poly version of the shirt, and we can see in our wireframe, the wireframe's pretty simple, but it's still got most of the details. And you can decide your level, like maybe this is the level you want to work with. That's pretty reasonable. We can see in the upper left-hand corner how many points there are. So at level 1, this is 10,000 verts. Too high for a mobile game, totally fine for a AAA game. But let's keep it low because it'll also make it easier to unwrap. So I'm going to leave it at level 0. As soon as that's the case, I can delete this because I don't need this modifier anymore. Now I need to think about, well, how much of the solidify do I need? So the solidify modifier is giving me, well, all of this thickness. So we see without it, it's relatively thin. It looks to me too, like if I go into edit mode, I think I've got an extra ring of faces in here, which I don't need. It's on both sides. So let's get rid of that. Don't know how that was in there, but that's fine. And now the question is, how much thickness do I need on this, and where do I need the thickness? So there's parts I can see the inside of the collar, so I probably need a little bit of it, but I don't need all of it. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you how we can apply this, but we can still cut out the parts we don't need. So let's apply this shirt for now, and we're going to name this now shirt underscore low. Shirt is done. Let's move on. Let's start walking through it and take a look at the next piece. I got my belt here. I've got a couple modifiers that went with it. I did a solidify, and I did this bevel and subdivision modifier. I don't need the bevel, and I don't need the subdivision. I might take maybe just with this subdivision, Yeah, let's cut that out. I don't need any of that. This belt by itself is fine. But I don't need the inside of this. So in my Solidify, if I turn it to only rim, you'll see it'll only give me the outside of the belt, which is actually perfect for me because I don't want to unwrap all this stuff on the inside of the belt because I'm never going to see it. So let's apply this. And just like before, I'm going to take this F2 belt underscore low. Let's hide that. Now let's get this next part up. I got the boots. The boots also have a thickness on them. They have a sole. They have a bunch of stuff that I'm going to need to keep. And I've got my multi-res. Same thing with my roll to res. Like anytime I see that, I want to apply the shape to the base. And then I can delete my multi-res. And as for my Solidify, you can see if I do the only rim, I'm going to lose some parts I need. But I don't need any of the stuff inside the boot. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply it, but then I'm going to take these faces, this ring of faces here, and I'm going to delete these faces. And I'll mirror this for now, because I know I can work on these other parts later. I can always mirror it again. And then I hit L, and that's everything inside the boot, which I also don't need, because I only need the outer boot. So now I have just the parts that I'm ever going to be able to see, and nothing on the inside. Sometimes, too, it's helpful to have face orientation on, so you can see what is outside and what is inside. Okay, and let's go ahead and put a mirror on, because that way we only have to unwrap one side. Boots underscore low. We're flying here. Let's do the buckle. Buckle is pretty straightforward. It's a pretty simple object. I just basically don't need any of the other stuff other than my main shape that I had. And I could delete off the back, and yeah, let's just go around the back here. I'm just going to take off the back faces. Everything else stays. Other than that, buckle is done. Pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at the eyebrows. Eyebrows are going to be on the head. Maybe it'll get painted on. Maybe it'll be baked into the detail. It's pretty simple. And in fact, I don't need the eyebrows to be geometry, because I'm going to bake it, and so that geometry will be on the head anyway, so I'm just going to get rid of those eyebrows. They'll be totally fine. Don't even need them. Let's do eyelashes. I definitely am going to need the eyelashes. I don't need the backs of these, so you know the drill. Solidify. We're going to say only rim, which is going to give us not the rest of this stuff. I have a couple subdivisions in here, but if we see if we turn them off or we turn them on, like, you're going to get some different effects. How about this if I turn that off? I feel like this is low enough resolution. I'm going to apply all three of these. And I think this will be, it's a little high resolution, but it's going to give me some of the detail I want. So eyebrows, eyelashes, low. Hide that. Eyes. Eyes are pretty simple. They're, let's see if I can find them though. I'm still in local, that's why. I just don't need the back parts, so I can take these and just, oh, I'm in mirror, that's why. Edge split, 3, L, X, and faces, because I only need the front. Eyes underscore low. A lot of these objects are going to get combined together, so that's not a problem. Take a look at the hair. I've got something weird going on here with the hair. I think I had a couple extra verts here that I just need to be able to delete. Turn off my viewport visibility, and I can see right in there. Let's merge those. M, merge to center. It's a pretty simple shape. This is the hair I decided to make. I kept it pretty simple. I use a Solidify modifier. And I do want both sides of this. I have plenty showing. It's not worth saving the rest of it. As far as the subdivision, you know, subdivision on, subdivision off doesn't really change too much. And I feel like I want a little bit more geometry in here anyway. So let's apply all of these. And that's going to be my hair. And I think that'll be a pretty decent for my hair. Hair underscore low. Hide that. Let's take a look at the body. And the body, of course, as you recall when we were doing clothing, is only what we can see. So this one's already pretty prepared. It's already chopped up for what we do and don't need. And it already has the stuff that I want. So Luna body, low. Hide that. Let's go to the pants. Pants are great. I don't need to do anything to this. I just need to go to my shape, apply my base. I can delete this. This one's ready to go because, again, I have the shirt above it, I have the belt above it, I have the boots below it. Nothing's shooting through it. So pants underscore low. Hide that. Sash. So the sash has a bunch of multi-res stuff that I'm going to apply. Apply base. Delete the modifier. Maybe I don't delete it. Maybe let's go down here. I want to go at least one level. So let's apply that. I think that's better because it's not so much. And then in solidify, only rim, just like we were doing with some of the other things, and apply. So that is going to be sash underscore low. Hide that. And then I have the sort of loose sash piece. So again, like before, probably, let's say, what level do I need to be at in the viewport? Maybe somewhere up to this level is probably pretty good. I'm going to apply it. And then my solidify, I'm also going to be able to apply because it needs to have its own thickness. So sash loose, low. Hide that. Almost done. Let's take a look at the soles. The soles mostly are here to stay. I guess the only things I have are this mirror, but I don't need the tops of them. So I can maybe delete those faces. And let's check out where they are relative to the boot to see, make sure it's not going to cause us the problem. Anywhere that I see gaps like this, I might just fit in. Just so I don't see that red shining through. One or two spots. I could also clean up and remove all the stuff from the bottom of the boot too. And this boot's apply here. Pretty aggressive. Ooh, what happened? Oh, that's why. This just got really out of place. So I'm gonna just manually nudge this back into place. It'll be fine in the bake though. The rest of this is fine. Maybe a little bit higher. So they kind of push through each other. Okay. Sole, low. And last, I got the vest. So the vest is all this stuff up here. It's pretty pinched together in the middle. But like some of the other areas, it's a question of what do I see on the inside and the outside. Let's shape it and apply the base. I don't need the rest of it. And then in solidify, I am going to keep both sides of my solidify modifier because there's some parts I may or may not need. So now we start to figure out the fun part. What do we still need? What can we keep? And what parts are overlapping with each other so we don't need them? So we kind of already cut some stuff off here. And there's some other areas we can do too. You can see this is where, like the vest, there's parts we can and can't see the inside of. So in our vest, we can't see anything on the inside, maybe above to this point. So I'm going to isolate this. I'm going to hit 3. And let's go from here around in a circle. Holding control and just clicking in a little circle like so. And then I'm going to delete all of these faces. And then we can work our way up on the inside of this collar. So I'm always trying to isolate just one or two pieces at a time. Taking these, and then I can hold L, hit L, like hover over something. L will hit everything connected, but I didn't get it all disconnected. Oh, because they're on the collar here. So Alt or Option, click around. Let's delete that, and let's delete these. So I'm just trying to keep the stuff down. This is the reason I could have just done that rim only, but in my particular model, so now we see, I can see under there, there's a little bit of red if we really look at it, but not that much. Things like the inside of this don't really show up that well. Let's do the same thing with the shirt. So look at the parts of the shirt. this whole collar, maybe to about down here, is going to be really visible, and then this inside is going to be really visible. Everything else isn't. So I do the same thing. Let's really get around to the inside of this. And that's maybe too high. Go this way and see what that gives us. Okay, yeah, that's more what I'm looking for. So I can delete these two. And then if I select the ring now, it only gives me that, which is great because it's going to separate, which is what I want to do. I want to get rid of anything on the edges. I don't need anything on this bottom because that's, as you can see, it's under the vest. So I don't really see the bottom of this shirt. And then I need to get the inside of this. Because again, this is all the inside, and I can, the way I'm looking at it, this I can leave. So I'm going to go up one higher. Sometimes a bit tough to spot. Let's see which we got here. Well, I'll just move it. Okay, there's nothing really inside that. What's going to happen if I L? Okay, it does grab all of it. So a little bit of detective work, kind of like I'm flying inside of it almost. Let's delete those faces. Same thing in here. Just zoom in on the inside, getting rid of these faces. And now L is just the inside of the shirt. And just double checking it. Yep, not seeing any red through there. Who needs it? I could go through and delete everything under the shirt I don't see. For instance, everything under here at the shirt, I also don't need because it's under. I'll make sure I got the shirt object correct. Yeah, because right about here, pretty much everything under this level, I'm not going to see. You just sort of delete it, and then maybe I can just pull it down a little bit. I'm using the sculpt tool, not because I'm sculpting, just because I like to nudge things with the sculpt tool. The rest of this I'll leave. It's worth keeping. This one's fine. I think the other overlaps are okay. I already cleaned up the other parts. You know, hey, is there some area under the head I'm not using? Yeah, but is it really worth not doing all this stuff? Oh, this should be like, I'll call this hair to, because it's sort of our sideburns low. Or I can combine it with the hair as an object. Just control, let's go from here. Make sure I apply that solidify. Apply that mirror. And I can join it with this object. So it's just going to be hair low. I have a couple areas where I get some like, this is that Z fighting stuff, and this is why we generally delete things under other models. But we can also just smooth back, and it just sort of obliterates what's there. So we're looking for any areas that are poking through that are going to cause us trouble. Things like this, you might say, oh, you can see the back of the bubble. It's such a weird angle. You're hardly going to see it. Mostly just nudging to look for any areas where things are going to be noticeable or visible or really a problem. So like I'm trying to clean up a little bit of where this sash goes. So now I've got my low poly, and you can see if I turn on my high poly, they like overlap with each other, and this is what the bake is going to make the bake work. So I got one more step to do on the low poly, and that is to actually get the unwrap done. And this can be a bit time consuming, but because we've broken up into parts, it's not that complicated. We're just going to take it one piece at a time, just like I did before. UV editing. Let's go into belt. And it's, you know, gotta, like everywhere there's a 90-degree angle, I can safely say I want an edge. So I like to kind of hover over an edge like this, and I hit Control G. And this is going to let me select everything that has a similar angle. And I can change the tolerance of it. And we can see it's going to give me pretty much all the edges on this model. Maybe one or two more. Great. And it's not going to give me any of the other edges. Okay. mark seam, A, unwrap. Gives me anything weird, we can always touch it up, but usually the best way to do something like that is to mark another seam here, unwrap it, and it divides it into 2 pieces. And let's do same thing for the inside of this. So this is where that other seam is, and I'm just gonna delete that face because I don't need it. A, unwrap, now it's in 2 separate pieces, which is much preferable to us, and it's much easier for us to unwrap. So that's belt low. Let's move on to boots. Get these suckers unwrapped. And a trick I like to use for this that can make all of this unwrapping really fast is check this out. I'm going to do an unwrap, but I'm going to turn on in my U menu. There's a type of unwrap we can use here that's live unwrap. So it's up here under UV and it's called live unwrap. And what this is going to do is let me use 2. And if I hit control when I click, it's going to create this face, but under this pick shortest path, I can change it to be tag seam. So as I go, it's actually live giving me my seam, and it's going to unwrap my model as I go. So it just sort of saves me a step, and it's always going to try to pick the shortest path. Remember, any cylinder, it needs to have a direction the seam actually goes in. So I'll do it like that. That looks great. Same thing with the back. I need the inside of this boot. It's going to be a little hard to get in here, and it's a little hard to see. Sometimes that invisible mode can help, but we can see that really, really sharp angle. This one right here. Control E, mark seam. That's where I want that. I'm going to take this back. And yeah, let's just mark a seam along this whole back of the boot. And actually, if this was a real boot, that is where there would be a seam anyway. So it makes sense. So I'm sort of auto going. And like I said, let's do that unwrap. And it's going to be unwrapping it for us. I don't want this seam running along the front here, running through the boot, which I don't want. So it looks like, let's get this by itself. I think that's going to be necessary. The boots, and let's take a look at it and view it local. Doesn't want to let me do. Okay. So I can do the same kind of like trick, which will deselect things as well. So the same way I selected them. I can do a little deselect. Okay, so I'm getting the bottom of the shoe, top of the shoe. This stuff is tricky, but it's just like the unwrapping. There we go. Helps us fill all this out. So the boots are good to go. Belt's good to go. Let's go to the buckle next. Buckle's pretty simple. And this is probably fine to do a smart UV project. Simple enough. Pieces are straightforward enough. I'm going to be combining all these together in a little bit as I go. Eyelashes, also pretty simple. I'm going to just do a U, and I'm just going to project from view, and I'll do an unwrap of them. It's more than enough for that, because they're really flat. Same thing with the eyes. Eyes, A, and then a U, and I project from view. So I'm kind of looking at it, and I do an unwrap, which is going to give me a nice eye unwrap. Hair, let's see. looking at the hair stuff in here. So this is going to run through the edge of everything because of the way I made it. So I'm just going to take the inside and the outside of the hair. And let's just unwrap it and see what it does. I'm going to call that a hair unwrap. That is fine for me. Now I've got the body. The body is still mirrored, so I'm going to have to apply that mirror. And this one's kind of a mess, but heads can be a bit weird. Heads and hands can be a bit weird to unwrap. What I like to do is pick a line right here, and I want to get under it. So let's go ahead and take it from here. Control click. Oh, that didn't go the way I wanted it. Let's take it a couple steps at a time then. So this now seems like it's not nearly enough, but you'll see what I'm doing in a second. Let's find the right line that's going to run through my hand without too much trouble. So I'm looking to run, usually on something like this, through the sides of the fingers like so. And then I'll run around the thumb. Kind of running over top of it like so. And mark seam. So I'm splitting up the top and the bottom. My character also has gloves, so that's works pretty well for me. And let's do the same over on this side. E, mark seam. And then using my mark seam tool. I find UV unwrapping can either be really annoying or really soothing. Depends on your mesh. And there you go. You're like, it looks weird, but actually that's not a bad head unwrap from the start. See, it kind of smooths things out for us. So this is pretty nice. Let's get to these pants. Again, pants are pretty simple. We want seams wherever you would expect them in like real clothing. Think about where the seams, if this was a real pair of pants, would go. They'd probably run along the side, like so. Get it along this side too. And they'd probably run up in through the middle. Just get all these, seam, and I'll take these down. Once you got that, I've got basically 4 pieces. Unwrap parts of my pants. No sweat. Pants are easy. This little sashy guy, nothing to it. It's just got some angles, so Shift G, face angles. Gets me most of what I want. Maybe just misses the corners. Because everything's got corners. I can mark the seam here. I use that local view a lot, as you can see, because it makes it easy to just think about one thing at a time. Mark seam, and then let's mark out our corners, mark seam, hit up the remaining edges wherever we still need them. This is basically like a box that I'm unwrapping. A, U, unwrap. Exactly what I'm looking for. Sash is done. Let's do this sash. This one's pretty simple. Just need a seam, probably in the back because it's the least noticeable one. Mark seam. Done. Simple enough. This one doesn't have a lot going on. Tubes are actually the easiest things to unwrap when you get used to what you're doing. Let's take a look at this shirt. So I've deleted a lot of it, the parts I don't need. And I could go further now. I probably don't need any of this either. But just like with the other stuff, especially the pants, the same kind of idea. Where would there be a seam if this was a real shirt? So let's go from here. I want to clear that seam because I don't want a seam there. And run it that way. Same deal from here. Running that seam through the mesh and under. Let's get this marked as a seam. And let's run that same line in here. Mark seam. Going around. Mark seam. And then select these. Mark seam. I'm going to make a division line along the middle and include this little bit here. Mark this seam. And let's separate out this collar, because this collar is something I want. You know, collars have seams on them too. Maybe go up a little higher here. Yeah, this feels better. So again, looking at actual clothing, like maybe even in your own closet, can help you get a lot of information. And I'll split off all these on the outside. If you're wondering what that purple stuff is, that's my creases that I used in the last video. So let's see what this unwrap looks like. We're just looking for anything too bad or too messy. What am I looking at here? See, this one's a little weird. It's got a lot going on. And if I'm getting a really weird shape like this, because I'm trying to get the inside of it, I'm trying to get the outside of it, you know, I say, maybe it's worth splitting into another piece or two. Like maybe I take, because I'm getting the inside and the outside of the collar, I think. See, I can hover over it and hit L. These are all the parts I'm getting. It's trying to connect really a lot of stuff together. So maybe I make my life a little easier. And I continue the seam there. Let's see what this looks like now. Didn't really give me much more, but I guess these are all still connected into each other. So I'm going to go from here, and I'm going to go around. I'm going to split this inner collar from the outer collar. And I don't need either of these seams anymore. Okay, unwrap. It's a lot better. Still got this. So that's the kind of like detective work about like, oh, why isn't this going? Well, it's because I didn't put a seam in here like I did on the other one. Mark seam. Okay. Looking a lot better. How about this part? Let's take a look at this unwrap. It's kind of going up and around. And I realized I forgot a good seam in here, which is the shoulders. So like, again, your shirt is going to have a seam running along the shoulders. So we should have one too. Much better. You can see how when I did it, it's like it's now filling in a lot more information on this. And it's a much better looking unwrap. Almost done. Soles the shoes. These are pretty low fidelity areas. There's not a lot going on with these. I mean, they're pretty straightforward. So I can pretty much just, I'm going to take something off the back like so. I'll just take this as a seam, and then I'll just work my way around the foot like this. And since they're mirrored, I'm going to have an inner and an outer part. And let's, I don't like when they're big and like long and stretched out like this, so let's do that. And that's a lot better. Getting this little guy. And so sometimes if I see just one little piece like this by itself, I ask, where did that come in? So again, a little detective work here. and Y. Oh, well, for whatever reason, they wanted to come back together. That's good. And last is my vest. So, just like before, where do I have my seams? Well, I know I'm going to need some seams on the shoulders. Mark seam. And I'm probably going to need a seam that runs on the inside of this whole shape to separate this inner part of the vest from this outer part. Okay, that's going to be good. And let's run some seams along the edges here. And let's see what the unwrap looks like. All right, not bad. So, I have all my pieces. They're all unwrapped from each other. Now what I want to do is to make this complete and give me truly my low poly character, I'm going to start combining things into one solid, all together unwrap. See what's going on here. You see I've got a little bit of pinching happening there. Oh, that's the inside of the arm. Must be. I wonder if. One sec. I was trying to figure out why my selections weren't working and highlighting. It's because I had this set to not selectable. It still lets me select it here, but it wouldn't let me select it in the viewport. I was like, what's going on with that? I'm gonna hit sculpt up, make sure I'm in this and try to nudge this out a little bit. That my hand isn't poking through. Who needs that? I know I don't. Okay. So with all these selected, going back into UV editing, I can take all of these together. Oh, vest _ low. I'm going to take all these objects, select them at the same time, and I can tab, and this is the UV. This would be terrible because they're all overlapping with each other. I can do this in groups, I can do this in pieces, I can do this all together. The easiest way is to do everything together, but before that, I need to make sure I apply any of my mirrors. I like this because since I unwrapped it, like anything I have mirrored is going to be respect to the unwrap that I already did. So I can apply any of these and I can just do another unwrap. So I'm going to select all these and just make sure I have no modifiers. They don't appear to. Let's say A, and I'm going to do, I've unwrapped all of these. So what I can do is go to UV and average island scale. Or let's try just an unwrap of all these together. Not so bad. Some of these, though, I don't think unwrapped particularly well. What happens if I go up to UV, pack islands? That's not quite right. Something I need to make sure with all of this is, oh, that's why. So you saw what in here? I was getting a little confused because in here, this belt buckle was coming in so much bigger. Well, sure enough, I look at the belt buckle and of course, what do you know? It doesn't have the right scale. So I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to hit Control A and I'm going to do all transforms. Now it doesn't put all the origins in the exact same spot, so they'll all line up with each other, but I also know they all have even unwraps. So now if I go to UV and I average island scale, much better. And now let's do our pack islands. I can set my margin to 0.01 just to make sure nothing's overlapping. This is by far not a perfect unwrap. This has got some real issues in it. Let's see if I can figure out where's like this in my mesh. Oh, I never unwrapped. That's why. I didn't unwrap these little hair pieces in my hair. See, this is what happens if you miss stuff in your unwrap. Local view by itself. Tisk Gander. Okay, well, I don't need the insides, or I just need the outsides of this. So let's get a quick delete on these faces and do the same thing here. And I'm also seeing some little extra pieces, something. Delete these. Let's do faces and any extra edges like this, because yeah, who needs extra edges like that? That's just going to create headache for you. Anytime you see little kind of thin hair, little edges, we can just delete those. I get them too in my models. Unwrap. So now we have unwraps for everything. Okay, so this is nice. Everything's here. Let's get into it. And now let's see. Average island UV scale. Try that again, and then pack islands. Oh, I gotta do all of them. Average islands UV scale. Pack islands. Set my margin. There's definitely other tools that can be used for this kind of thing that can really speed things up. I have a bunch of plugins I really like. There's a free plugin called Text Tools that you can find. I'll link it in the video. There's a free version that's great, and it includes like things like checker maps, which if you activate them will actually show you like how your spacing works. They also have something really cool in UV layout called like straighten. So for some of these objects, like for instance, this little square here, something, let's turn off disable sync so I can actually change these, called rectify, and it rectangulates stuff. And some of these models work a lot better if you can quadrangulate them. You don't want to do this for everything. Like I wouldn't want to do this for, say, like the hair. See, it causes real issues. Like you wouldn't want to do this for the face. Wow, like that's really messed up. But for stuff that's sort of wrapping around and clearly should be, like this should be cylindrical, this belt. Rectify is great for that kind of thing. So I'm just going to do it on anything that looks... This is, like I said, it's an optional plugin. I'll give you all the link for it. It's a nice tool to sort of straighten out your UVs and help with any of these unwraps. Especially like anything like this, like the collars and the little seams between things. It'll actually bake a lot better if they're more straight. And I can select multiple of them. I don't have to select them one at a time either. Just hunting down any of these weird kind of shapes. These ones are fine. These ones are fine. Yeah, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. I think that's the majority of them. Things like the pant legs and the sleeves, I want to keep them not like this because I want them to follow their more organic shape. But stuff that's like a nice tube or cylinder, especially collars or seams running along the edges of things, well, they do that really well. So again, image, I'm going to do UV, average island scale, UV, pack islands. Just making sure I have enough of a seam. 0.01 maybe. Give it a little bit more space in between them just in case. 0.01 is probably too low. I'll go with 0.05. There's different tools that help you with that too, though. This can detect overlaps and things like that. I've also had like a paid tools that I like to use a lot, like UV Pack Master 2, which costs something, but it's maybe one of the best packing tools that's out there. It's so good and it's really efficient. This is fine. Now, in a real model, I'll probably break it into more pieces because I want more space for the head. And if you decide like, hey, you know what, my face needs more UV space, because it probably does. We're going to be doing things like eyes and stuff like that. I can scale up the head, give it more UV space, hit A, and then do another pack islands, and it will respect that I want my face to have more space. So we can see the size of the grid in this using this pack is going to demonstrate for me using text tools my checker map, and I can change my checker map size too. So if I change it to 2048, it's going to give me a different scale checker map. Want to see like my eyes, how big are they on here? Yeah, it's probably fine. It's probably enough size. I can like set things like my eyes can be mirrors of each other. So if I know I have two eyes, like I can totally set one eye and just put it right on top of the other eye. Because that way, if I texture one eye, the other eye will turn out exactly the same, which is probably going to be helpful for me. So I'll leave that there. Other than that, I'm pretty ready to go with this. All I have to do, select the whole object, export it as one. So this is going to be Luna low, and export my FBX. Let's turn this off and then bring my high poly back. And this is all my high, and this is select all of this just like I did before. Make sure I have selectability on it. Do face orientation off. And what's cool about this is it'll export with whatever my highest level of multi-res is. So make sure these are turned up to whatever you want as your highest value. So whatever generally it is in the sculpt, whatever the highest value of it that you think you have in your mesh is. Something like this, I might subdivide more, add more detail to. Mirrors are all fine though, because none of the UVs here matter, none of this other stuff matters. I just need the mesh, and I do also want to make sure nothing pops through, but it doesn't look like anything is. So let's select all this. I also want to make sure all the scales and everything are right. So let's do my transforms, make sure that didn't screw anything up, especially with mirrors. You want to make sure none of my mirrors are going to get screwed up by that, but it doesn't look like they did. And then this is going to be Luna high. So this is going to take longer. So here I've got Luna high is faces, triangles. So triangles is like 500,000 triangles. My low poly one is only 25,000 triangles. It's only 12,000 verts. Very simple. This is something you could easily run on a mobile game. But we're going to get the detail from this to go on to the other one, which is what I'll do in the next video. That'll only take a minute. I actually spent most of my time on this one.